Valentina Cruz got to the Baron Imports warehouse bright and early, 5:45 a.m. to be exact. Her cleaning cart clattered on the concrete as she let herself in through the service entrance. She liked the early shift because the building was deserted, peaceful, just the low hum of the industrial lights and the faint sounds of traffic coming from the Brooklyn streets outside. Nobody ever paid her any mind. That was fine by her, actually. The warehouse office smelled like leather and fancy cologne, the kind of place where serious men made serious decisions. Valentina had been cleaning it 3 times a week for half a year, and she'd learned to blend in. Keep your head down. Do your job. Don't ask questions about the late-night meetings or the guys in dark suits who sometimes left blood on the bathroom sinks. Her supervisor at the cleaning company had been very clear about that last part. She was wiping down the conference table when she heard voices out in the hallway. Her heart skipped a beat. Nobody was supposed to be here this early. The owner, Mr. Barron, never got in before 8. His associates even later. Valentina grabbed her cart and started inching toward the supply closet. But the door swung open before she could duck inside. An older woman stepped in first, dressed elegantly in a cream-colored dress despite the early hour. Her silver hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and she carried herself with the kind of quiet dignity you get from being respected without having to demand it. She was speaking rapid-fire Italian to someone behind her, her voice warm and musical. Then she spotted Valentina and stopped in mid-sentence. For a split second, they just stared at each other. The woman's dark eyes, so much like Nana Julia's eyes, widened with surprise, and Valentina, who'd spent her entire childhood listening to a lonely Sicilian widow tell stories about her village, who'd learned to speak the dialect as naturally as Spanish or English, blurted something out without even thinking. "Binitu, Signora," Valentina said softly, the greeting just tumbling out as easily as breathing. "Welcome, lady," but not in standard Italian. In the specific dialect of Sciacca, the small fishing village on Sicily's southwest coast that Nana Julia had left 60 years ago, but never stopped missing. The woman's hand flew to her chest. Her face went pale, then flushed, and her eyes welled up with tears so fast that Valentina took a step forward without even thinking about it. "Madonna Santa," the woman whispered. "How do you know those words?" The door opened wider, and 3 men walked in. The first was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing an expensive charcoal suit that didn't do a thing to hide the coiled, dangerous energy underneath that civilized exterior. He had dark brown hair, cut short and neat, a strong jaw shadowed with stubble, and eyes so dark they were almost black. There was a thin, white scar on his right cheekbone, and his hands had the scarred knuckles of a guy who'd learned to fight long before he'd learned to run an empire. Matteo Barron. Valentina had seen him from a distance, always showing up after she left, always surrounded by armed guys who watched everything with cold, calculating eyes. She'd never been this close to him before, never felt the full force of his presence. The way he seemed to take up all the air in the room just by existing. He was looking at his mother, concerned. Then his gaze shifted to Valentina and locked. The 2 men behind him stopped talking. The entire room went silent. Even the fluorescent lights seemed to hum more quietly. "What did you say to her?" Matteo's voice was deep, controlled, but there was an edge to it that made Valentina's pulse go crazy. "I just said good morning," Valentina managed, her own voice barely a whisper. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset anyone. I'll go." "No." The woman reached out, grabbing Valentina's wrist with surprising strength. "No, please tell me. How do you know that greeting? That specific greeting?" Valentina looked at the older woman's face, saw the tears streaming down her elegant cheeks, and felt her resistance just melt away. "My neighbor," she said quietly. "When I was growing up, she was from Sciacca. She taught me, the Sciacca." The woman's voice broke on the word. She turned to her son, switching to rapid Italian that Valentina understood perfectly. "She knows Sciacca. She speaks like my mother spoke." "Matteo, how is this possible?" Matteo was still staring at Valentina, his dark eyes moving over her face like he was memorizing every detail. The cleaning uniform that hung loose on her small frame. The long, dark hair pulled back in a practical bun. The warm, brown eyes that were trying so hard not to show how terrified she was. The light brown skin and delicate features that spoke of her Mexican heritage. "What's your name?" he asked. "Valentina Cruz." "And this neighbor who taught you Sicilian, Valentina, what was her name?" "Julia Catalano." The name came out thick with emotion. Nona Julia had died 2 years ago, and Valentina still missed her every single day. "She lived in my building when I was a kid. She was alone, and my mom worked a lot, so I'd go to her apartment after school. She taught me to cook, to speak Sicilian, told me stories about her village." Valentina met the older woman's gaze. She talked about San Calogero a lot, the patron saint of Sayaka. She said his sanctuary was on a hill overlooking the sea. And every June they had a festival. The woman made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "I grew up going to that sanctuary. My mother took me every Sunday." She pressed her hand to her mouth. "Julia Catalano. I knew that name. She was my mother's cousin. 3 times removed. We thought she died years ago." "She did," Valentina said softly. 2 years ago I was with her. Madonna." The woman pulled Valentina into a tight embrace, and Valentina stood frozen, shocked, as this elegant stranger held her and cried into her hair. She wasn't alone. Thank you for being with her." Over his mother's shoulder, Valentina met Matteo Barron's eyes, and what she saw there made her breath catch. Not anger or suspicion. Something else. Something intense and focused and almost hungry, like he just stumbled upon something he hadn't even known he was looking for. When his mother finally let go of Valentina, she cupped the younger woman's face in both hands. "I'm Rosaria Barron. And you, sweet girl, you carry a piece of my home in your voice. Do you know how rare that is? How precious?" "I'm sorry," Valentina said again because she didn't know what else to say. "I should go. I have other buildings to clean." "No." Matteo spoke for the first time since learning her name, and his voice held the kind of authority that people didn't question. "Marco, call her supervisor. Tell them Miss Cruz won't be finishing her route today. We'll compensate for the lost time." "Sir, you don't have to do that," Valentina protested. "I really should go." "Please," Rosaria said, still holding Valentina's hands. "Please stay. Have coffee with me. Let me talk to someone who knew Julia, who learned from her." Her voice dropped. "Who sounds like home." And Valentina, who'd spent her entire life being invisible, who'd perfected the art of slipping through spaces without leaving a mark, found herself nodding because the hope in Rosaria Barron's eyes reminded her so much of Nona Julia in those last months, when she'd gripped Valentina's hand and made her promise to remember, to keep the language alive, to not let everything she'd taught her disappear. "Okay," Valentina said quietly. "I'll stay." Matteo's eyes never left her face, and when he smiled, slow and deliberate, Valentina felt the ground shift beneath her feet. She had no idea that agreeing to stay for coffee would change absolutely everything. Over the next hour, Valentina sat in Matteo Barron's private office, drinking espresso that was stronger and better than anything she'd ever tasted, while Rosaria peppered her with questions about Nana Julia, what she'd been like, what stories she'd told, what recipes she'd shared. Valentina answered, her voice growing steadier as she talked about the woman who'd been more of a grandmother to her than her own blood relatives. Matteo sat behind his massive desk, supposedly reviewing paperwork, but Valentina could feel his attention on her, constant and unwavering. It made her skin feel too warm, made her heart beat too fast. "She taught you to cook?" Rosaria asked, leaning forward eagerly. "Yes, I can make pasta Cesardi, Cassatelle, even Sfincian." Valentina smiled at the memory. She said I had good hands for pasta, that the dough knew when you were impatient with it. Rosaria laughed, the sound pure and delighted. "My mother said the exact same thing, and she was right. Cooking is like prayer. You have to be present." She reached across the small table between them and squeezed Valentina's hand. "You know, my son, he owns several restaurants, legitimate businesses. Would you ever want to cook professionally?" "Mama," Matteo said quietly, his voice holding a warning Valentina didn't understand. "What?" Rosaria looked at her son with complete innocence. "I'm just asking. The girl has skills. She shouldn't be cleaning offices." "I like cleaning offices," Valentina said quickly. The steady work, good hours. I'm saving money. For what? Matteo asked, and it was the first direct question he'd asked her in the past hour. Valentina hesitated. She'd never told anyone about her dreams. They seemed too big, too impossible for someone like her. But something about the way Matteo was looking at her, patient and genuinely interested, made the truth just spill out. Culinary school. I want to be a real chef someday. Maybe open my own place. She looked down at her hands. Sounds stupid. It doesn't sound stupid at all. Matteo's voice was firm. It sounds like you know what you want. That's rare. Their eyes met, and the air in the room seemed to thicken. Valentina felt her cheeks warm, felt that strange awareness prickling over her skin again. He was looking at her the way nobody had ever looked at her before, like she mattered, like she was visible. I should really go, Valentina said, standing abruptly. I'm sure you both have work to do. Let me drive you home, Matteo said, already standing. No, it's okay. I can take the subway. It's 6:30 in the morning, and you're a young woman alone. I'll drive you. It wasn't really a question. And when Rosaria smiled and said, Let him, Cara. He's a gentleman. I raised him right. Valentina found herself nodding. The car was a sleek black sedan with leather seats and windows so darkly tinted that the outside world felt like a distant dream. Matteo drove himself, which surprised her. She'd expected a driver, bodyguards, the whole entourage she'd seen from a distance. I sent them ahead, Matteo said, like he could read her thoughts. I wanted to talk to you alone. Valentina's heart kicked. About what? About the fact that you've been cleaning my office for 6 months, and I never once saw you. He glanced at her, his profile sharp and commanding in the early morning light filtering through the windshield. How is that possible? I'm good at being invisible. Why? Because it's safer that way. The words came out before she could stop them. Too honest. Too raw. Matteo's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Safer than what? Than being noticed. Valentina looked out the window, watching Brooklyn roll past. I'm a housekeeper, daughter of immigrants. I don't have papers for my mom, and my dad died when I was 12. People like me, we learn to stay quiet, to not draw attention, because attention means questions and questions mean trouble. You have nothing to fear from me, Matteo said quietly. Valentina laughed, the sound bitter. You're Matteo Baron. Everyone has something to fear from you. Instead of being offended, he smiled. Fair enough. But let me be clear about something, Valentina. You impressed my mother. You carry knowledge of her culture, her home. That's incredibly rare and precious. In my world, that creates a bond, a connection. He pulled up in front of her building, a rundown apartment complex in a neighborhood that was trying hard to gentrify but hadn't quite made it yet. You're under my protection now. I don't need protection. Everyone needs protection. His dark eyes found hers, and the intensity there stole her breath. Especially people who matter. I don't matter to you. You just met me. And yet, I can't stop thinking about the way my mother's face lit up when you spoke to her. The way you made her cry with happiness just by knowing a language most people have forgotten. He reached out, his scarred fingers brushing her cheek so gently that Valentina forgot to breathe. That matters to me, which means you matter to me. Valentina should have pulled away, should have thanked him politely and gotten out of the car and never looked back. But she couldn't move, couldn't think past the feeling of his hand on her face. Rough and warm and impossibly gentle. I don't understand this, she whispered. Neither do I, Matteo admitted. But I'm going to figure it out. He pulled back, and Valentina felt the loss of his touch like a physical ache. Go inside. Get some rest. I'll see you soon. When? His smile was slow and dangerous. Soon, Valentina. Promise. She got out of the car on shaking legs and walked into her building without looking back. But she felt his eyes on her the entire way. When she finally reached her tiny apartment and locked the door behind her, Valentina pressed her back against the wood and closed her eyes. Her heart was racing. Her skin felt electric. And she couldn't stop thinking about the way Matteo Baron had looked at her. Like she was something precious. Like she was worth protecting. Like she belonged to him. The flowers arrived the next morning, Not roses or orchids or anything expensive and impersonal. Wildflowers, sunflowers and daisies and black-eyed Susans arranged in a simple mason jar with a card in strong, slanted handwriting. For making my mother smile. Thank you. Valentina stared at the flowers for a long time, her chest tight with an emotion she couldn't name. He came to the warehouse every morning after that. Valentina would arrive at 5:45 to clean, and by 6:15, Matteo would walk through the door with 2 cups of espresso and that slow, dangerous smile. He'd sit at the conference table while she worked, and they'd talk about everything, about nothing. She learned that he loved old movies, especially westerns. That he'd taken over the family business at 25 when his father had a heart attack. That he had a younger sister, Lucia, who taught kindergarten and had no idea what the family really did for money. That he was trying to legitimize as much of the business as possible, to give the next generation choices he'd never had. And in return, she told him about growing up in Brooklyn with a mother who worked 2 jobs and a father who died in a construction accident. About Nonna Julia teaching her that family wasn't always blood. About her dreams of opening a restaurant someday, something small and intimate where she could cook the food Julia had taught her. Why Sicilian food? Matteo asked one morning, his dark eyes curious. Why not Mexican? Your heritage. Because Nonna Julia gave me something when I needed it most, Valentina said simply. After my dad died, I was angry, lost. She gave me purpose. Taught me that keeping traditions alive mattered. That memory was a gift. She smiled. The food is how I honor her. How I keep her alive. Matteo was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, You're remarkable, you know that? Valentina's cheeks warmed. I'm really not. Yes, you are. He leaned forward, his elbows on the table, close enough that she could see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes. You're kind and brave, and you carry pieces of other people's stories like they matter, like they're treasures. That's rare, Valentina. That's beautiful. The air between them felt charged, electric. Valentina's hands stilled on the table she'd been wiping down. Her pulse was thundering in her ears. Matteo? She whispered and didn't know what else to say. I want to take you to dinner, he said. Somewhere nice. Let me do this properly. Do what properly? Court you. He said it like it was the most natural thing in the world. Because I can't stop thinking about you. Can't stop wanting to know everything about you. And I think you feel it, too. Valentina did feel it. Had felt it from that first morning when his eyes had locked on hers and the world had tilted sideways. But this was crazy. He was a mafia boss. She was a housekeeper. They existed in completely different worlds. I am not from your world, she said quietly. Good. My world is violent and complicated and full of people who want things from me. Matteo reached across the table and caught her hand, his scarred fingers warm against hers. You want nothing except for me to leave you alone so you can clean in peace. Do you have any idea how refreshing that is? Despite herself, Valentina laughed. Is that why you keep bothering me? Because I'm not impressed? I keep bothering you because you make me feel human. Because when I'm with you, I'm not the boss or the heir or the weapon. I'm just Matteo. His grip tightened. Say yes to dinner, Valentina. Please. She should say no. Should protect herself from whatever this was. But looking into his dark eyes, seeing the hope and vulnerability there, she couldn't. Okay, she whispered. Yes. His smile could have lit up the entire warehouse. He picked her up on Friday night, and Valentina almost didn't recognize herself in the mirror. She'd bought a simple green dress with money she probably should have saved, and she'd left her hair down for the first time in months. It fell in dark waves past her shoulders, and she'd even put on the small gold earrings her mother had given her for her quinceanera. When Matteo knocked on her door and she opened it, the look on his face made every penny worth it. Dio Santo, he breathed. You're beautiful. Valentina's cheeks heated. It's just a dress. It's not the dress. He stepped closer, his eyes moving over her face like he was trying to memorize every detail. It's you. You're stunning, Valentina. He wore a dark suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, but he'd left the tie off and the top button undone. It made him look less like a dangerous criminal and more like a man taking a woman he cared about to dinner. His dark brown hair was slightly damp, like he'd just showered, and the scent of his cologne made her mouth go dry. The restaurant was small and intimate, tucked away in Little Italy with exposed brick walls and candlelight flickering on white tablecloths. The owner greeted Matteo with obvious respect and warmth, speaking in rapid Italian before switching to accented English when he saw Valentina. "Any friend of Matteo's family is family here," the man said, his smile genuine. "You want my best tonight?" "Yes, I take care of everything." They sat at a corner table, and Valentina felt herself relaxing as the evening unfolded. Matteo was attentive but not overwhelming, asking her questions and actually listening to the answers. He told her stories about growing up in the family business, about the weight of expectations and the constant pressure to be perfect, about wanting to be better than his father, to build something that wouldn't destroy the next generation. "Do you want children?" Valentina asked, surprised by her own boldness. Matteo's expression softened. "Yes, someday when I find the right woman." His eyes met hers. "Someone strong enough to handle my world, but soft enough to remind me why I'm trying to change it." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. "That's a lot to ask of someone," Valentina said quietly. "I know, which is why I haven't found her yet." He paused. "Until maybe now." Valentina's breath caught. "Matteo, we just met." "I know. And I'm not asking you to marry me tomorrow." His smile was gentle. "I'm just asking you to give me a chance. To let me show you who I really am. To let this be something." "Something," Valentina repeated, tasting the word. "Something real." Matteo reached across the table and caught her hand. "I'm not good at games, Valentina. I don't know how to be casual. When I want something, I go after it completely. And I want you not to own you or control you, just to be with you, to make you smile, to learn everything about you." His thumb traced circles on her wrist. "Is that something you could want, too?" Valentina looked at their joined hands, at the scars on his knuckles and the strength in his fingers, at the way he held her like she was precious. And she thought about the past 2 weeks, about how he'd shown up every morning just to talk to her, about how he'd listened when she spoke, how he'd remembered every detail she'd shared, about how he'd looked at his mother with such love when Valentina had spoken Sicilian. This man was dangerous, but he wasn't dangerous to her. "Yes," she said quietly, "I could want that too." The smile that spread across Matteo's face was pure joy. He lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss to her knuckles, his eyes never leaving hers. "Thank you." After dinner, he drove her home through the quiet Brooklyn streets. The car was warm and intimate, and Valentina felt her courage growing with every passing block. "Can I ask you something?" she said as they pulled up in front of her building. "Anything." "Why me?" The question had been burning in her chest for weeks. "You could have anyone, someone from your world, someone who understands the life." "Why me?" Matteo turned off the engine and shifted to face her fully. In the dim light from the street lamp, his features were all sharp angles and shadows. "You want the truth always?" "Always. Because you saw my mother crying, and your first instinct was to comfort her. Because you learned Sicilian from a lonely old woman just to keep her company. Because you work 2 jobs and save every penny for a dream you're too humble to talk about." His hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. "Because when I look at you, I don't see the empire or the money or the power. I see a woman who values kindness over everything else, who makes people feel seen." His voice dropped. "You make me feel seen, Valentina. The real me, not the boss. Just the man. That's why you." Tears pricked at Valentina's eyes. No one had ever said anything like that to her before. No one had ever looked at her the way Matteo was looking at her now, like she was something miraculous. "I don't know how to do this," "I've never dated someone like you," she whispered. "Good. Because I've never felt like this about anyone," he replied. He leaned closer, his forehead almost touching hers. "We'll figure it out together. Okay?" "Okay," she breathed. "Can I kiss you?" His voice was rough, barely controlled. Valentina's heart was racing so fast she thought it might burst. "Yes." Matteo's mouth met hers, and the world just disappeared. The kiss started gentle, almost hesitant, like he was giving her an out, a chance to pull away. But when Valentina made a soft sound and pressed closer, something inside him just shifted. His hands slid into her hair and he kissed her deeper, his tongue tracing the seam of her lips until she opened for him. Valentina had been kissed before, sure, but never like this. Never with this intensity, this focus, this overwhelming sense that she was the only thing that mattered in the entire universe. Matteo kissed her like he was starving, and she was sustenance, like he'd been waiting his whole damn life for this moment. Her hands found his chest, feeling the solid muscle beneath his expensive shirt, feeling his heart pounding just as fast as hers. He was warm, strong, and overwhelming in the absolute best possible way. When they finally broke apart, both gasping for air, Matteo rested his forehead against hers. "Christ, Valentina," he muttered. "You're going to be the death of me." Valentina laughed, breathless. "Good." He smiled against her mouth, pressing one more soft kiss to her lips. "I should probably let you go inside before I do something stupid, like beg you to stay with me. Would that be so stupid?" His eyes darkened. "Yeah, because you deserve to be courted properly. And because if I get you alone in my apartment right now, I'm not going to want to let you leave." He pulled back with visible effort. "Go inside, Valentina. I'll call you tomorrow. Promise?" "I promise." He kissed her once more, quick and fierce. "Now go, before I change my mind." Valentina got out of the car on shaking legs, her lips still tingling, her heart still doing the damn Indy 500. She walked into her building and turned to wave. And Matteo was still sitting there, watching her with those dark, intense eyes. She knew, right then and there, that everything had changed, that there was no going back to her quiet, invisible life. And for the first time in years, that didn't scare her one bit. The next 2 months were a complete blur, a whirlwind of stolen moments and a connection that just kept deepening. Matteo took her to family dinners where Rosaria fussed over her endlessly, and Lucia, his younger sister, immediately claimed her as her new best friend. He took her to museums, to movies, to long walks through Prospect Park where they talked about absolutely everything and absolutely nothing. He sent her flowers every week, but never the same kind twice. Wildflowers, tulips, peonies. Each arrangement with a note that made her smile. Asterisk saw these and thought of you. Asterisk asterisk you make every day brighter. Asterisk asterisk missing you. He never pushed for more than kissing, though. Even though the tension between them was growing thicker with every date, every lingering touch, every heated look across the dinner table, Valentina could feel the restraint in him, the way he held himself back, and God, it just made her want him even more. She learned the man beneath that dangerous reputation, learned that he woke up at 5 a.m. every morning to work out because staying strong meant staying alive. That he called his mother every single day without fail. That he'd anonymously paid for 3 neighborhood kids to go to college. That he loved thunderstorms and hated surprises and had a surprisingly good singing voice that only came out after he'd had a glass or 2 of wine. She learned that his life was dangerous, saw the evidence of it when he showed up one evening with a split lip he wouldn't even try to explain. But she also learned that he kept his word absolutely, that his loyalty was unshakable, and that once he decided to protect someone, nothing on this earth could change his mind. And slowly, carefully, Valentina let herself fall, really fall, in love with him. The complications slammed into her in late August, 3 months after they'd started dating. Valentina was leaving Rosaria's house after a cooking lesson when a woman stepped right into her path. She was beautiful, but in a cold, calculated way. Designer clothes, perfect makeup, diamonds glinting at her throat and wrists. Everything about her just screamed money and power. "You're Valentina Cruz," the woman said. It wasn't a question. "Can I help you?" The woman's smile was sharp, like broken glass. "I'm Francesca Romano, Matteo Barron's fiancée." The words hit Valentina like a physical blow. For a moment, she couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the roaring in her ears. "What?" she managed to croak out. "Oh, he didn't tell you?" Francesca's voice dripped with fake sympathy. "Our families arranged our engagement 6 months ago. We're supposed to get married next spring." Valentina's mind raced. 6 months ago, right before she'd met Matteo. If you're really engaged, why are you here? Because Matteo is stubborn. He thinks he can refuse the arrangement, but he can't. This engagement is business, sealed by both our families. It's gonna happen whether he likes it or not. Francesca looked Valentina up and down with obvious disdain. And you? You're just a distraction, a way for him to rebel before he accepts his responsibilities. You're not from our world. You're nothing. The words should have hurt, should have made Valentina doubt everything. But instead, they just made her angry. If he really wanted to marry you, he wouldn't be with me, Valentina said, her voice steady despite the way her heart was pounding. And if you really believed he'd come back to you, you wouldn't be here trying to scare me off. Francesca's eyes narrowed. You have no idea what you're dealing with. No idea what it means to be part of this life. You're right. I don't. Valentina lifted her chin. But I know Matteo, and I know that he doesn't do anything he doesn't want to do. If he wanted you, he'd be with you. But he's not. She walked away before Francesca could respond. Her hands shaking but her head held high. She made it to the corner before pulling out her phone. Matteo answered on the first ring. Valentina, what's wrong? Who's Francesca Romano? Silence. Then, Christ, Valentina, where are you? Did she come see you? Yes, at your mother's house. Valentina's voice cracked despite her best efforts. Is it true? Were you engaged to her? I'm coming to get you. Stay where you are. Just answer the question, Matteo. Were you engaged to her? It's complicated. That's not a no. Valentina, please. Let me explain in person. Don't. Valentina ended the call, her chest tight with hurt and anger. She'd been so damn stupid. Of course, there were complications. Of course, someone like Matteo Baron would have obligations, arrangements, expectations. Her phone rang again immediately. She ignored it. It rang 5 more times as she walked toward the subway, and each time she let it go to voicemail. She was halfway down the subway steps when a hand caught her arm. Valentina spun around, her throat tight, to find Matteo standing there. He was breathing hard, like he'd been running, his dark hair disheveled, his tie loosened, and his eyes were more open, more vulnerable than she'd ever seen them. How did you get here so fast? She asked, barely a whisper. I was already on my way to my mother's house to see you. He didn't let go of her arm, his grip gentle but firm. Please just let me explain. You were engaged to her. I was. His jaw tightened, past tense. It was arranged by our fathers 6 months ago. A business alliance. But I never agreed to it, Valentina. I've been fighting it since the day they announced it. But you didn't tell me. I know. He looked genuinely anguished. I know, and I'm sorry. I should have told you from the start, but I was afraid. Afraid if you knew, you'd think it was too complicated. That you'd walk away before I had a chance to show you what we could be. So you lied. I never lied to you. His hand came up to cup her face. Everything I've told you, everything I've shown you, that was real. My feelings for you are real. The only thing I kept from you was a problem I was already working to solve. Valentina wanted to believe him, wanted to desperately, but the hurt was too fresh, too raw. She said, You're going to marry her eventually, aren't you? That you have to. She's wrong. The absolute certainty in his voice made Valentina look up. I ended it officially today. Her breath caught. What? I called a meeting with both families this afternoon. I stood up in front of my father, her father, and half the organization, and told them the engagement was over. That I wouldn't be marrying Francesca Romano, or anyone else they chose for me. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. Because I've already found the woman I want, Valentina. I told them about you, about what you mean to me, about how you make me feel like I'm not just the boss or the heir or the weapon. I'm just a man. A man who's falling in love with a brave, beautiful woman who speaks my mother's dialect and makes me want to be better. His voice dropped. I should have done it sooner. I should have ended things with Francesca the second I met you, but I was trying to do it carefully, trying to avoid conflict. But you're not trying anymore. No. His smile was fierce. Because she came after you. Because she tried to hurt you by making you doubt me. And that made it very simple. You're more important than any alliance, any arrangement, any political peace. His forehead pressed against hers. If I have to choose between you and everyone else in my world, I choose you every single time. The possessiveness should still frighten her. But standing there with Matteo's dark eyes burning into hers and his hand gentle against her face, Valentina felt something in her chest just settle. Your family can't be happy about this. My father is furious. Matteo's smile turned bitter. But my mother is thrilled. She's been telling him for weeks that you're the one I should be with. That you understand us in a way Francesca never would. He pulled back slightly. And she's right. You carry pieces of our culture, our history. You keep traditions alive just by existing. That's more valuable than any business alliance. Valentina studied his face, seeing the truth written there, the determination, the absolute conviction. You really ended it. I really ended it. He caught both her hands in his. And I need you to know something. I'm in love with you, Valentina Cruz. I'm in love with your kindness and your strength and the way you make me laugh. I'm in love with how you honor the people who came before you. I'm in love with you, and I need to know if there's any chance you could love me back. Her heart was hammering so hard she could barely hear her own thoughts. This was insane. For months ago, she'd been invisible. A housekeeper no one even noticed. Now she was standing in front of a mafia boss who'd just declared his love, who'd broken off his arranged engagement for her, who was looking at her like she hung the moon. I do love you, she whispered. Even though it's crazy. Even though I should probably be running away as fast as I can. I love you, Matteo. His smile could have lit up the entire city. He kissed her right there on the subway steps, his hands in her hair, and Valentina didn't care that people were staring. Didn't care about anything except the feel of him and the knowledge that this impossible, dangerous, wonderful man loved her back. When they finally broke apart, Matteo rested his forehead against hers. Come home with me, Valentina. Matteo, not for that. Not yet. His voice was rough. But I need you close tonight. Need to know you're safe. That you're mine. Please. Valentina should have said no. Should have maintained some distance. But she found herself nodding. Okay. Matteo's penthouse overlooked the Brooklyn Bridge. All exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows and masculine elegance. But what really caught Valentina's attention were the personal touches. Photos of his family on the mantel, his mother's recipe book on the kitchen counter, a worn collection of Sicilian folktales on the coffee table. My mother gave me that when I took over the business, Matteo said, following her gaze. She said I should never forget where we came from, what we're fighting to preserve. Valentina picked up the book carefully, running her fingers over the faded cover. Nana Julia had this exact book. She used to read to me from it. Then it's yours. He said it simply, like it was nothing. Matteo, I can't take your mother's book. It's not hers anymore. It's mine, and what's mine is yours. He came up behind her, his hands settling on her waist. I meant what I said earlier. You're it for me, Valentina. This isn't some casual thing. I want everything with you. She turned in his arms, looking up at him. Everything is a lot. I know. His smile was gentle. But I'm a patient man. We'll take it one day at a time. I'm not going anywhere. They spent the evening curled up on his couch, talking and kissing and simply being together. Matteo told her about his plans to legitimize more of the family business, about the restaurants and import companies and real estate he was building, about wanting to give the next generation choices. And Valentina told him about her dreams for her own restaurant, about the menu she'd been working on in her head for years, about wanting to honor both her Mexican heritage and the Sicilian traditions Nona Julia had taught her. I'll help you, Matteo said quietly. When you're ready, I'll invest, find you a space, whatever you need. I want to do it myself. I know, but let me help anyway. Not because you can't do it alone, but because I want to be part of your dream. His hand found hers. Let me be part of your life, Valentina. All of it. She looked at their joined hands, at the contrast of his scarred knuckles against her smooth skin, at the way he held her like she was precious. Okay. You can be part of my life. She smiled up at him. All of it. Matteo's answering smile was pure joy. He pulled her into his lap and they kissed until Valentina's head was spinning and her body was aching with want. "Stay with me tonight," Matteo murmured against her mouth. "Please, I just want to hold you." Valentina knew she should go home, should maintain some boundaries. But looking into his dark eyes, feeling the solid warmth of him beneath her, she just couldn't. Okay. He carried her to his bedroom and they undressed each other slowly, reverently. Matteo's body was exactly what she'd imagined. Broad shoulders, muscular chest, the kind of strength that came from years of fighting. He had scars everywhere, evidence of a violent life. But Valentina kissed each one like she could heal them. When he finally settled above her, his eyes dark with want, he paused. "Are you sure?" "Yes." She pulled him down for a kiss. "I'm sure." He made love to her with a tenderness that made her cry. His hands were everywhere, learning her body like he was memorizing it. His mouth followed, pressing kisses to skin that had never been worshipped before. And when he finally slid inside her, they both gasped at the intensity. "Dio," Matteo breathed, his forehead pressed to hers. "You feel perfect." He moved slowly at first, giving her time to adjust, his eyes never leaving her face. But when Valentina wrapped her legs around his waist and urged him deeper, something in him unleashed. He made love to her with an intensity that bordered on desperation, like he was claiming her, marking her as his. And Valentina gave herself over to it completely, to the pleasure, to the connection, and to the overwhelming feeling of being wanted. When they finally shattered together, Matteo buried his face in her neck and whispered words in Sicilian that she understood perfectly. Words of love and possession and devotion. Afterward, he held her close, his fingers trailing patterns on her bare skin. "I love you," he said quietly. "More than I knew it was possible to love someone. I love you too." Valentina pressed a kiss to his chest, right over his heart. "Even though you're terrifying and dangerous and probably bad for me, I'm the best thing that ever happened to you." He said it with such absolute conviction that she laughed. "Maybe you are." They spent the rest of the night talking and touching and learning each other. And when Valentina finally fell asleep in Matteo's arms, she felt safer and more cherished than she ever had in her entire life. The next few months passed in a haze of happiness. Matteo took her to meet more of his family, his associates, the people who made up his world, and everyone accepted her with surprising warmth. Once they understood she had Rosaria's approval, she met his father, a stern man who looked at her with suspicion until she made him Sicilian wedding cookies exactly the way his mother used to. After that, he called her Figlia and told Matteo he'd chosen well. She grew closer to Lucia, who confided that she'd never seen her brother so happy. "He smiles now," Lucia said one afternoon while they were shopping. "Really smiles? That's because of you." And Rosaria treated Valentina like the daughter she'd never had, teaching her family recipes and stories and traditions. They spent hours in the kitchen together, and Valentina absorbed everything like a sponge. "You should open your restaurant soon," Rosaria said one day. "You're ready. I'm still saving money. Matteo would help you." "I know, but I need to do this myself." Valentina looked at the older woman. "You understand, don't you?" Rosaria smiled and squeezed her hand. "I do, and I'm proud of you for it. But don't wait too long, Cara. Life is short. Dreams are meant to be lived." In October, 6 months after they'd met, Matteo told her he had a surprise. "What kind of surprise?" Valentina asked suspiciously. "The kind you'll like." He wouldn't say more, just told her to pack a bag for a week and bring her passport. 3 days later, they landed in Sicily. Valentina had never been to Italy before, had never been anywhere outside the United States. And as their car wound through the countryside toward the coast, she felt tears prick her eyes because this was the landscape Nonna Giulia had described so many times. The rolling hills covered in olive groves, the ancient stone buildings, the glimpses of brilliant blue sea. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice thick with emotion. "You'll see." When they pulled into the small fishing village of Sciacca, Valentina's breath caught. It was exactly as Nona Julia had described it. The colorful buildings tumbling down to the harbor, the fishing boats bobbing in the water, the smell of salt and lemons and fresh bread. Matteo had brought his mother with them, and when Rosaria stepped out of the car and looked around at her childhood home, she started crying. "I haven't been back in 40 years, she whispered. They spent the week exploring the village. Matteo took Valentina to the sanctuary of San Calogero on the hill overlooking the sea, the same sanctuary Nona Julia had talked about. They walked through the market where Rosaria's mother had bought fish every morning. They ate at tiny restaurants where the owners remembered the Baron family name. And on their last evening, as the sun set over the Mediterranean, Matteo took Valentina back to the sanctuary. "I want to show you something," he said, leading her to a quiet corner of the grounds. There was a plaque on the wall, old and weathered, and engraved on it was a list of names. Families who'd supported the sanctuary over the centuries. "Catalano," Valentina breathed. "Nona Julia's family." "Yes." Matteo wrapped his arms around her from behind. "She was here, Valentina. She stood where you're standing. She prayed at this sanctuary. And somehow, impossibly, she ended up in Brooklyn, teaching a little girl the language and traditions of her home, so that little girl could grow up and speak to my mother in a dialect she thought she'd never hear again." His voice roughened. "That's not coincidence. That's fate." Valentina turned in his arms, tears streaming down her face. "Matteo." He dropped to one knee. Valentina's breath stopped entirely. "I know this is fast," he said, pulling out a ring box. "I know 6 months isn't very long, but I also know that I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep holding you every night. I want to build a future with you, have children with you, grow old with you." His voice cracked slightly. "I love you, Valentina Cruz. I love your courage and your kindness and the way you honor the people who came before you. I love that you speak my mother's language and understand my culture in a way no one else ever has. Will you marry me?" The ring was beautiful, a sapphire surrounded by diamonds that caught the sunset light, but Valentina barely saw it. She was too busy looking at Matteo's face, at the hope and love and vulnerability written there so clearly. "Yes," she said, the word coming out choked with emotion. "Yes, of course, yes." His smile could have lit up the entire island. He slid the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into a kiss that was equal parts relief and joy and love. When they finally broke apart, Rosaria was standing nearby with tears streaming down her face. "Julia knew," she said quietly. "She must have known. She prepared you for us. And maybe she had. Maybe Nona Julia, lonely and homesick in Brooklyn, had seen a little Mexican girl who needed her and decided to pass on her traditions, her language, her love. Maybe she'd known somehow that Valentina would carry those gifts forward, that she'd use them to build bridges between worlds. Or maybe it really was just fate, the kind of impossible, beautiful fate that brought a Sicilian widow and a Mexican-American child together, that taught a housekeeper a dying dialect, that made a Mafia boss fall in love with a woman who made his mother smile. Either way, Valentina was grateful for it, for all of it. They were married 2 months later, in December, in a small ceremony in Sayaka. The wedding was intimate and warm, with both families present and the village priest officiating. Valentina wore a simple white dress that Rosaria had helped her choose, and Matteo wore a dark suit that made his eyes look even darker. The ceremony was conducted in Italian, but when they exchanged vows, Matteo spoke in Sicilian dialect, and Valentina responded in kind, her voice steady and sure. "Ti voglio bene," she said, "I love you," in the language of his ancestors in the... Here's the translation and rewritten version in American English. Matteo's eyes welled up with tears as he kissed her, and the taste was a mixture of salt, joy, and forever, just like the words Nona Julia had taught her. The wedding reception was a beautiful coming together of cultures. Rosaria had prepared traditional Sicilian dishes, while Valentina's mother had made tamales and tres leches cake. They played Italian folk songs alongside Mexican mariachi music, and everyone danced, laughed, and celebrated the improbable love story of a mafia boss and a housekeeper brought together by a language most people had long forgotten. Later that night, in the small cottage Matteo had rented overlooking the sea, he made love to his wife with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. "I'm so glad you spoke Sicilian to my mother that morning," he murmured against her skin. "So glad you were brave enough to say hello in a language you shouldn't have known." "I'm glad too." Valentina pulled him closer. "I'm glad for all of it. For Nonna Giulia. For your mother? For you? For this? For us?" "For us," Matteo corrected, and kissed her until they both forgot everything except the taste of each other. A year later, Valentina stood in the kitchen of her new restaurant, her heart swelling with pride. The space wasn't large, but it was perfect, with exposed brick walls and copper pots hanging from the ceiling. The menu was a love letter to both of her heritages. Sicilian classics with a touch of Mexican influence, dishes that honored both the woman who'd raised her and the woman who'd taught her. The restaurant was named Giulia's, and on opening night, Rosaria sat at the best table, tears streaming down her face as she ate pasta cisardi, made exactly the way her mother used to make it. Matteo stood behind Valentina, his arms wrapped around her waist, his hand resting on the gentle curve of her belly where their first child was growing. "You did it," he murmured. "Your dream, you made it real." "We made it real," Valentina corrected. Because yes, she'd done most of it herself, but Matteo had been there every step of the way, helping when she asked, supporting her even when she didn't, and believing in her even when she doubted herself. "I love you," he said quietly. "More every day. I love you too." She turned in his arms, standing on her toes to kiss him. "Thank you for everything. For seeing me when I was invisible. For loving me when I didn't think anyone would." "You were never invisible to me," Matteo said. "From the moment you spoke Sicilian to my mother, you were the only thing I could see." And it was true. That one greeting, spoken in a dying dialect, had completely changed both their lives. It had taken a shy housekeeper and a dangerous mafia boss and brought them together in a way that seemed impossible but was, in its own way, perfect. Valentina looked around her restaurant, at the family gathered to celebrate her success, at the husband who loved her unconditionally, at the future growing inside her, and felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. Nonna Giulia had given her so much more than a language. She'd given her a bridge between worlds, a way to connect with people who should have been strangers, but instead became family. And Valentina would honor that gift every single day by keeping the traditions alive, by raising her children to speak Sicilian, by never forgetting where she came from or the people who'd helped her get there. Asterisk binita asterisk, she whispered, looking up at the photo of Nonna Giulia she'd hung on the wall. "Welcome to this new life, this new family, this future built on the foundation of an impossible love." And somewhere, Valentina liked to think Nonna Giulia was smiling. If you enjoyed Valentina and Matteo's love story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more dark mafia romance tales. Hit that bell icon for notifications so you never miss a story. And drop a comment below telling us what you thought. Should we do more stories featuring cultural connections and forbidden love?